All right, so now let's talk about how we actually might go around organizing some of these supplemental and assistance movements into an actual program that you guys are familiar with. I'm not going to worry too much about the accessory type stuff, just because I don't want to get a bunch of debate stirred up and a bunch of questions about things that don't really matter. That's going to be very much on kind of an individual basis. And again, it's not really all that consequential to the outcome of the program. So I'm not going to worry about that kind of stuff too much. I'm going to talk about exercises that might actually have some carryover to your training that you might actually think about implementing into a routine. So we're going to start with the heavy, light, medium system, which again, I've already done one video on this. You guys can go take a look at that kind of outlines the structure of a heavy, light, medium program and how to do it. So if you're not familiar with what this is, you might go watch that video and then come back to this. But basically here we have kind of a simple heavy, light, medium routine. I'm not going to go into all the sets and reps and all that kind of stuff because it doesn't really matter too much. Anytime you're training a 3-day-a-week full body type program, one of the things to remember, you're really not going to include that much assistance type work. You're just not going to have the time and energy to do it. I'll show you in a minute how we do a split routine, which is if you're wanting to do a higher volume of assistance type work, you're going to probably go with a split routine just because it allows for more time and more focus on the assistance lifts, whereas a full body program doesn't typically allow for all that much. But there are ways to kind of sneak it in. I'll show you kind of my thinking about how I might go about doing that. So Monday we've got our heavy squat, our medium bench, and our medium deadlift, okay? So as you guys know, you don't always have to do just a medium version of the primary exercise. In the simplest type of HLM program, you will. That's what you'll do. You'll just stick to basically like 4 lifts, and you just vary the volume and the intensity each day to create loads that are heavy, light, and medium, all right? And you stay very basic. My preference is not really to do that other than maybe the first couple of times that you run through a heavy, light, medium program. My preference is to actually use supplemental lifts on the light and medium days that are light and medium by nature, so that you create a similar level of stress, but with a little bit more variety, both because I believe that a little more variety is going to help you get stronger because you can train those light and medium exercises harder. You're still training a light and medium movement hard, but by nature it's lighter medium, so it's not creating the same level of stress. And it just makes training a little bit more fun. Nobody necessarily wants to just squat, bench, and deadlift at every single workout. So maybe a few of you guys do, but that's not me. So day 1 would be heavy squat, and this would just be your basic back squat for whatever sets and reps you're going to do that day. Your medium bench, let's say you could do the medium bench, or let's say we do one of these supplemental movements, and so we're going to do a close grip bench or maybe an incline, both of which are really good medium day movements, okay? And then your medium deadlift, okay? My favorite kind of medium day deadlift movement would be your stiff leg deadlift, okay? So now today becomes heavy squats, close grip bench press, stiff leg deadlift, all right? And then what we might do is let's throw in, maybe 2 assistance movements that we can fit in on here. And a lot of times what I like to do is whatever I ended with here, sometimes I'll roll into an assistance movement that is training basically that same muscle group. And a lot of times it just cuts down on the warm-up time. And so what I might do is right after I get done with the stiff leg deadlifts, we go into a light posterior chain movement, and which would just double up the effects of training the hamstrings hard here. So I might go into maybe like a glute ham raise, okay, or something like that, that kind of works the posterior chain a little bit. But again, it's not all that stressful, okay? I'm not going from stiff leg deadlifts to good mornings, in other words, okay? So we're going to do something like that. I don't know, let's just say 3 sets, 15 reps, something like that. So we're just sneaking in a little bit of volume into there, and you would add that in probably slowly over time, because we're going to always keep in mind when we add in assistance movements, we're going to kind of keep in mind what's coming in the next workout, okay? And that's what makes a training plan rather than an exercise plan. We don't just go in here and do this and then just do whatever the fuck we feel like doing following that, because we're not just thinking about today, we're also thinking about Wednesday and Friday. What's on the schedule next? Well, we've still got a squat, press, and deadlift or some sort of variation of that on Wednesday. So we're going to be careful about how much stress we add here because we don't want it bleeding over and screwing up the main workout that we still have to do later in the week. So add it in slowly and adapt to the increase in volume. And then over time, you'll find yourself doing a very high volume of work on these days and able to recover from it. And then since we did a bench work here and we don't have another, let's say, chest exercise on Wednesday, let's do another chest exercise on here. So maybe we do a glute ham raise, and then we do, let's say an incline, let's say dips. How about that? We'll say dips for 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. All right. So kind of another, total upper body, but kind of a chest tricep movement. So then we would do the heavy squats, the medium bench, the deadlifts or the stiff leg deadlifts, and then we would finish up with some glute ham raises and some dips. And maybe if we wanted to, since these are basically body weight movements, we could superset them in kind of a circuit fashion, and maybe even work up to doing 3 to 5 sets apiece, and just bang, 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 back and forth between glute ham raises and dips to create a little bit of a conditioning. Is it super, super hard conditioning? No, not really. But if you go hard enough on each exercise and you keep your pace up, you'll get a conditioning effect from that. It's not necessarily the same as going out and pushing a prowler or doing sprints or something like that. But you're getting a conditioning effect as well as working on some targeted muscle mass that will improve. That will over time, as you get stronger on these exercises, will help improve your capacity on the bigger, more important lifts. Okay, so that would be Monday, and then let's say light squats. We just stick with a basic light squat. If you wanted to, you could also do a front squat here. Front squats work good in place of light squats. So let's go ahead and put that. So this would be kind of a preference thing. Light presses. Okay, so these are going to be just your standard overhead press. Okay, so they're going to be trained heavy, but by nature the overhead press is lighter than the bench press or most of its variations. So we're just going to say the press. We're not going to mess with that one. Light deadlifts. Let's see. We're doing stiff leg deadlifts here. We're going to do regular deadlifts here. That's a lot of work on the low back. So maybe your light deadlift, maybe we pick a pulling variation that doesn't have as much stress on the low back. So maybe instead of the light deadlift, we do a barbell row pulled dynamically from the floor. Okay, and that's kind of a barbell rows are kind of a hybrid supplemental lift, assistance lift. They're not obviously they're not real high in stress, but they can be trained heavy. They are trained with a barbell, so we'll go ahead and call them a supplemental lift. But they're kind of in that gray area between supplemental and assistance work. Doesn't really matter. It's just a terminology thing. But we'll do barbell rows on this day so that we're getting taking some stress off of the low back while still getting a little bit of pulling volume in. And then, again, that principle that I like of just kind of picking up your first assistance movement, something that you're kind of already warmed up for. So you just roll right into that. Maybe here is where we go into some more back work, okay? And we do some chins, okay? And then maybe even a few sets of curls. So there's your accessory work, okay? Everybody's going to curl anyway, so let's go ahead and figure out where we're going to do it at, okay? And again, none of this stuff, there's obviously some fatigue created in the lats and the back from doing this type of work that done at excessive volume or excessive weights, that sort of thing, if you're not conditioned to it, could have carryover negatively onto your deadlift day. So you're going to be careful of that, and you're going to introduce this stuff in slowly, and you're going to manage the volume and intensity appropriately and build your capacity over time so that by the time you get to Friday, you're fresh and you're not beat up from what you did here, okay? So that's how we're going to program that. And being that this is a lighter squat day, our legs are still kind of beat up from Monday's heavy squat, which might be a combination of high intensity, high volume squat work. So here we'll probably just do the light squats, and that'll be enough for our lower body, okay? And then the accessory work will be mostly upper body stuff, okay? Medium squat. Let's say, you could just back squat again with a load that's 5 to 10% less than what you used on Monday. Maybe drop the volume just a bit. Or you could do something that's kind of, again, medium in load. And again, my favorite is probably a paused box squat. Okay, but there's other variations you could use. You could just do a regular pause squat. You could maybe even do a paused pin squat, although those get kind of heavy, and kind of pin squats are almost more like a heavy squat in terms of their stress, but you could probably fill them in there. Box squats are a little easier to recover from, I found, but it's whatever you want to do, okay? I'm not necessarily outlining a program that I'm prescribing to anybody in particular. I'm really more going over the thought process of how to set this stuff up, okay? And it's really not all that complicated, as you can see. Heavy bench, that we would just leave that alone. That'd be your heavy bench press workout for the week, whatever you wanted to do. And then we would do your heavy deadlift. One of the things that you could do, so like the heavy deadlift, we were talking about some of the supplemental movements, like overload movements that create a lot of stress that's similar to the primary lift. Maybe here on the deadlift, every other workout or every third workout, we're going to do rack pulls in place of the deadlift. So we're not going to do them together. We're going to do like every other workout or every third workout or something. We're going to do heavy rack pulls. And then, you got your heavy bench, heavy deadlift. You might be pretty tired, especially after the medium squats. So maybe here, Friday, on full body routines, a lot of times this is where I like to do a lot of tricep work, okay? Direct tricep stuff. And this is probably, tricep training is probably, that's why I did a video on it a couple weeks ago. Tricep training is probably the most useful instance where we do isolation work, just because bigger triceps, stronger triceps are going to have so much carryover to both the bench press and the press, probably more so than any other type of isolation type movement that you're going to do. So I do like to keep them in the program. Where do I like to put them? Typically, I like to put them on Friday, because if you guys have ever done any kind of hard, high volume isolation type tricep work, they tend to get fatigued. They tend to stay sore for a long period of time. They can create a little inflammation in the elbows. So Friday would be the best time to put these, because you do them on Friday. Saturday and Sunday are rest. You come back to Monday, and it's a medium bench day anyway. And so you wouldn't want to take the triceps and put them on Wednesday. Well, why not? Well, we got heavy bench on Friday, and you don't want to fuck it all up by having your triceps all burned out, okay? Well, why wouldn't we put the triceps on Monday with medium day? Well, because you got heavy presses on Wednesday, and you don't want to fuck that all up, okay? So you don't want to put your primary exercises that you're building your program around, you don't want to put those in jeopardy by kind of putting your assistance work in the wrong spot. All right, so you're going to see how you respond to these exercises. Watch your soreness pattern. Watch your recovery with these. See how you're performing the following workout, and if you find that adding these exercises in causes a performance regression on your main lifts, maybe you don't need any. Okay, I will say this though: a lot of times when you first put these assistance types movements in, sometimes you have to give yourself a week or two to adapt. And it might be that for a week or two, you do have a little bit of a performance regression. If your body is trying to adapt to a higher volume, you just need to watch it and pay attention to it over time. If over time you're just not getting anywhere or going backwards, then you might look at pulling that stuff back out. But you might also give yourself a little bit of a grace period there to ease into this stuff and see how your body reacts to it. So it's not necessarily, if you go into Monday and you say, oh, I'm still sore from triceps on Friday after week one, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. That's not really a fair amount of time to judge whether these things are actually going to work or not, because the thing with assistance movements, especially these smaller ones like triceps and glute ham raises and things like that, the benefit from doing these things comes over time, not like I did triceps today, therefore my close grip bench is going to go up on Monday. It doesn't work that directly, okay? It comes with benefit over time. So you need to add these things in, ease into them slowly over time, build them up slowly over time so that you're adapted to them and they become helpful instead of a hindrance. So, and then maybe here on triceps, maybe we sneak in another posterior chain movement. So if you did glute ham raises here, maybe you do something like 45-degree back extensions here for higher reps, in between, something like that, 15 reps. So, and again, this stuff, and you could do them in circuit fashion. All right, same principle as up here, just building a little bit of weight room conditioning going back and forth. Okay, and again, there's none of this stuff right here isn't necessarily making you stronger. No, but it does build a certain amount of base level of conditioning and functional capacity that'll make it easier to build volume on a routine like this over time. Again, you're getting yourself in shape to train. So a word on rep ranges for assistance work. There is not necessarily one rep range that we're always going to use all the time for every single assistance lift. It depends a lot on the body part you're working, the exact exercise that you're doing, the implements that you're using, whether it's barbells, dumbbells, machines, body weight, that sort of thing. But in general, your supplemental movements, which are going to look a lot like the parent lifts, your stiff legs, your close grips, all the front squats, that sort of thing that we've been over here. They're going to be trained by and large in the same way that we train the primary lifts. So lots of work, really, I'd say in the like the 3 to 8 rep range is probably going to be where most of those things occur. So you're not necessarily going to do a lot of heavy 1 rep max testing on all of those lifts, although you could. There's no reason why you can't, occasionally front squat up to a max, rack pull up to a max, close grip bench press up to a max. But by and large, that's not going to be the focus of your training with those lifts. You're going to be training more reps, heavier with those. So I'd say the bulk of your training with those is going to be in the 3 to 8 rep range. Maybe occasionally you go a little bit higher if you're trying to do some work capacity or muscle mass hypertrophy type training. You might go a little bit higher than that on occasion with some of these movements, but mostly 3 to 8. As far as sets go, I'd say probably if you're going to do it, my kind of rule is if you're going to do something, do 3 sets of it at least. Otherwise, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The exception might be something like rack pulls or something like that, where you might limit it to less. Some of these really stressful lifts, you might only work up to 1 main work set. But for the most part, with supplemental type work, I'm going to do 3 sets minimum, 5 sets probably maximum. That's just a very general rule. It's hard for me to give an exact prescription that uniformly fits every training program in every lift. But I'd say 3 to 5 sets, 3 to 8 reps, depending on the lift and how it's being used. With the assistance work, which is more isolation type work, more body part specific type work, same rule as far as sets, probably 3 to 5 total sets. But we're gonna bump those reps up a little bit, and those could be anywhere from, I'd say, 8 to 20 reps. The 20 would be for like body weight type stuff, maybe dips, or if you're doing like body weight rows or things like that. You might do like 20 reps. Those could be like cluster sets or rest pause sets as well. So typically when I recommend somebody does a set of 20 on something, I don't always mean that they're going to do 20 reps unbroken continuously, because that load or the resistance you use on that would be too light. But that might mean a set of 10, rest for 10 seconds, do 5 more, rest for 10 seconds, do 5 more. And that is your set of 20. So that's kind of your rest pause technique, which I would use for a lot of assistance type work. I think I'll probably do a video on that particular technique here coming up pretty soon. But the thing is, for a lot of you guys that are coming out of programs like Starting Strength or Texas Method, you're used to basically doing everything on a 5 rep set. But as you get into this type of stuff, not everything is going to be done for sets of 5. You're not going to, bench 5 reps, incline 5 reps, dips 5 reps, tricep extension 5 reps. It just doesn't work like that. One, those loads are too heavy to use across the board on everything. You're going to wear your joints out. You're going to wear yourself out systemically, trying to go really, really heavy on absolutely everything. So the rep range needs to increase for a lot of these movements, like with the tricep stuff and say the lat pulls here, whatever, the dumbbell work. You're really, a lot of what you're focusing on is muscle growth or hypertrophy type work, which when done in conjunction with the heavier barbell work, you're going to want to train those in a little higher rep range, like the 8 to 12 rep range, with a higher set volume perhaps. So you're getting in a lot of volume, short rest period as well. So you might go 5 sets of 8 to 12 reps with like a minute in between each set. So you're getting a high volume of work in a short period of time. Is how you're going to want to program that stuff. It's just going to work more effective than trying to do everything heavy all the time. And then as far as like, you notice like on this day where I said, a lot of the upper body, a lot of the assistance and supplemental work here is very much upper body focused. We can see that certainly on these 2 days, but then on this day we did a lot of like lat, upper back work. So very much upper body focused. And then all here we did was push the prowler. And the reason I said that is just because a lot of guys find that when they're squatting regularly with heavy loads and high volume, they're deadlifting regularly, high frequency and heavy loads, that sort of thing. There's just not like any sort of accessory type of lower body work can sometimes just interfere with the program. It beats up the joints. The lower body work and upper body work are just not the same. One, the squats and the deadlifts are so thorough in the amount of muscle mass that they work. There's not any upper body equivalent of that, really. So when you're doing those two movements, and obviously the loads are much, much heavier, they're much higher stress. So you're going to squat twice a week, pull twice a week. For most people, that's going to satisfy the strength requirements for training the lower body. They don't really need to do anything extra there. There's no other links in that kinetic chain that need to be addressed, like there might be, say, on a bench press, where you might need to train your triceps separately from just doing the bench press training. We don't really have that so much in the lower body, just because the squats and the deadlifts are so thorough. And adding in a lot of these bodybuilding type movements, leg extensions, leg curls, lunges type things like that. I'm not necessarily 100% against those things in every single context, but for a strength athlete, a lot of times they're going to take away more than they're going to give if you're not using them appropriately. So a lot of guys have found that the best volume, if they want some high volume leg work, so in place of like high repetition leg work that we might do with some of this upper body stuff, they just push a prowler or drag a sled. And it's concentric only work. It doesn't make them sore. In a lot of cases, it makes them feel better. It doesn't beat up the lower back. It doesn't beat up the knees. And so in a lot of cases, you might do a high volume of upper body work, and then you would do instead of like a lot of lower body assistance type stuff, you might just do a high volume of pushing a prowler or dragging the sled, and that might work better for a lot of you guys. All right. So now let's look at how we are going to use a split routine to kind of integrate your supplemental and assistance movements. And if you want to get into doing more assistance and supplemental type work, if that's the direction you feel like your training needs to go, or if that's just the direction you want your training to go because you're tired of the same old, and you want to spend some time in the gym doing something different, which there's some validity to that. When you get burned out on training, you tend to not put very much effort into it. The more excited you are about your training, typically the more effort you're going to put into it and the better return you're going to get. So if you want to introduce this type of stuff into your routine, the split routine is really the best way to do it. It's really superior to the heavy, light, medium routine, or certainly the Texas method or something like that, which just doesn't allow you to really do a lot of assistance type work effectively. So this way we can train the assistance work a lot heavier, a lot harder, and we don't have to worry so much about recovery because we have more time in between workout sessions that we're using the same muscle groups over and over again. So you don't have to worry too much about overtraining and impacting the following session. So typical split routine, this is very, very common in a lot of different training programs where you would basically have 2 upper body and 2 lower body sessions. So your upper body would be, Monday bench press focus, Thursday overhead focus, Tuesday squat focus, Friday deadlift focus, okay? So those are going to be your heavy lifts each day, and typically these will be the primary movements. You're going to bench, you're going to squat, you're going to press, you're going to deadlift. Maybe here, like in the heavy, light, medium routine, maybe every other workout or every third workout, you would do something like a rack pull, a heavy partial movement. That might work really well for a lot of you guys, okay? But that's going to be your heaviest lift for the week. Is going to be done on its day. So, and then the way that I like to do this is, and this is not my own unique thing. This is common in a lot of programming models, but we would do a supplemental movement on the inverse day. Okay, so on the Monday heavy bench day, we would do a supplemental press. Okay. And that might just be light presses, okay? It could be presses for higher reps, sets of 10 or sets of 8 to 10 or something like that. It could be a variation of a press. It could be a press off of the pins. It could be a press with a specialty bar using like an axle or fat bar or something like that. So it would be some variation of a standing overhead press, okay? It could be a behind the neck press, okay, which is not something I recommend for a lot of people. But if you can do them, that can be a valuable movement to add in right here, okay? Squat day, you would do your deadlift variant here. Usually for me, that's going to be like a stiff leg deadlift or a good morning is what I'm going to recommend right there, although there's certainly other movements that you could use. Some of you guys may even be able to use rack pulls here and still deadlift on Friday. So it just depends on your work capacity and your ability to recover everybody's going to be a little bit different in that. So again, this lecture is not about prescribing a workout to any one person. So don't just write down whatever I'm writing up in here and then go do it verbatim your next day. This is about how to think about setting this stuff up so that you're organizing your training week correctly. And then here might be the a supplemental bench press movement, okay? Okay, and this would be close grip bench or, anything like that, any kind of a bench press variation. Typically that would be lighter right here. Close grips are my favorite, okay? Friday would be a squat variant after the deadlift. So this could be a front squat, a box squat. Okay, so any kind of squat variation, or again, it could just be light squats. All right, so a lot of people don't like doing variations of the squat, especially like earlier intermediates, because they still feel like they need a certain amount of technical practice to kind of grease the groove a little bit. So you don't have to do a variation every time you do this. You could just do the same exercise a little bit lighter, the next day. So, and that's another thing. A lot of people don't like supplemental press movements, me included. I don't like variations of the press as much as I like just doing the press. And so, and another thing you could do here, like say you're a bench presser, you may only want to do the press once a week, and you would do your heavy bench here, a supplemental bench here, and then another supplemental bench here. All right, so maybe on Monday you're going bench press, incline, and then over here you're going press, close grip bench. So you're getting a little bit more specificity for your specific sport, okay? So you could do that as well. So lots of different ways to set this up. This is just kind of the way of thinking about it. So this would be your primary movements and your supplemental lift. And now we would go into thinking about, okay, well, how are we going to organize? Let's fit in, maybe 2 or 3 assistance lifts each day. So the way that I typically like to think about it is kind of in terms of like a body part split, like more of how a bodybuilder might think about setting up a routine. And typically these days, the Monday, Thursday day are going to be like chest, shoulder, tricep day. So you're going to organize your lifts basically around exercises that hit those body parts. So a lot of times what I'll do is, again, I'll roll in from whatever this supplemental movement, kind of whatever that, whatever muscle groups that targets, I'll do the first assistance lift will be kind of just rolling on through that. So, maybe here it's bench, incline, and we do dips and tricep extension, okay? So very much heavy on chest, shoulder, tricep, but we'll just assume this is for a power lifter, okay? So this would be somewhat appropriate for a power lifter, all right? So, and then Tuesday we have heavy squats, and we've got our stiff-legged deadlift variation, or maybe a rack pull, or maybe even a deficit deadlift, or something like that. And a lot of times on this day is where I will do, because we hit the legs really hard here with these heavy squats, so I'll do a lot of back work here on this day. So I might roll right in from, say, my stiff legs, I might roll right into barbell rows, and then I might go into chins, or if you're a big fat guy, you would do like lat pulls, because you can't chin after doing all this shit. And then maybe you do something like, maybe you do your curls here. Okay, because again, everybody's going to curl, so we're going to find a place to stick them in our week, so we're training them appropriately. All right. Now we go back here. We've got we did our overhead press, and we did our supplemental bench movement. We did our close grip bench. We did a lot of chest work here today. We did bench, and we did incline, and we did dips. So maybe we do a little bit more delt work over here. So let's go into our first assistance movement. We do a seated dumbbell press, okay, and we do that for like sets of 8 to 12, so we're getting more into that kind of hypertrophy range there. And then we pick another tricep movement, so maybe today is press downs. Again, if you're really wanting to drive up your bench and your press, I really think a lot of tricep work is helpful. So you would just kind of switch these movements out, though, on occasion, different variations of it, so you don't kind of wear out the same movement pattern. But that's, there's your first 3 days, and then so let's see, we did hit heavy deadlifts, and then we do front squats or box squats. So that's kind of kind of a leg theme there. So maybe at the end of the week here, we just go deadlift, front squat, and then we go out and we get our conditioning in, we push the prowler. Okay? And that's your week. All right? And there's obviously other ways to do this, but this would be, this is just a way of going about thinking of how to set up an organization of training. You obviously don't have to use these exact same exercises. You could do more than this. You could do a little bit less than this. You could switch your days around, however, kind of it works best for you. But this is similar to what I've used for a whole hell of a lot of people, and this organization works really, really well. The only thing that changes is just, slight manipulation of sets, reps, exercises, and that sort of thing. But this basic organization right here works really, really well. So this is kind of the correct way where you would want to fit this stuff in. And you can kind of see the relationship to the amount of supplemental work you would do and assistance work you would kind of do. And that's that. So let me know if you have questions. Hit me up in the comments section, or you can hit me up on my programming forum at startingstrength.com, and I can answer your questions there. And be sure to like and subscribe. And I appreciate it, guys. I'll talk to you next time.